Now, former President Jacob Zuma will today be at the High Court in Johannesburg in the case involving his private prosecution against his successor, Cyril Ramaphosa. The matter was postponed in December last year. Now, Zuma is accusing Ramaphosa of being an accessory after the fact, after he allegedly failed to act against prosecutor Advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Moore for allegedly disclosing his medical details in violation of the NPA Act. Our reporter, Canny Maphanga, is watching these proceedings, and she joins us now from just outside court. And Canny, it's so easy to be lost in the detail because the former president is involved in so many different cases around his corruption trial. Help us place why we're in court today.
Well, good morning to you, Ayanda, and to the viewers at home. Well, you may remember that in the former president's corruption trial, there was an alleged leak of his health records. He then reported the matter to the president, who then reported it to the Minister of Justice to report to the LPC. Now, we know that that was not satisfactory enough for the former president, who then launched a private prosecution bid with respect to this alleged leak, which he argued compromised the National Prosecuting Authority and the judiciary as a whole, or the justice system rather, if I could put it that way. What he had was three categories of persons he wanted to privately prosecute. That would be the alleged perpetrator, who he fingered as the state advocate Billy Downer. He then gave another category of an accomplice, alleged accomplice, which was journalist Karen Moore. He then moved to an accessory after the fact, an alleged accessory after the fact, and that is the President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, we know that the private prosecution was instituted in two different courts. That was the KZN High Court Division in Pietermaritzburg, the criminal court there, and the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg, the criminal court here. And that is with respect to the third category, the former president, or the current president rather, Cyril Ramaphosa. So essentially what he had tried to do here was to privately prosecute him as an alleged accessory after the fact, but we know that the current president, took this matter to the motion court and successfully invalidated that private prosecution. The Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg declared it unlawful, invalid, and set it aside, and found that it was for an ulterior purpose. You may remember he was hit with those summons right before the national conference, where he was expected to contest for that second term as ANC president, which he was successful in. Now, what brings us here today, Ayanda, is that how the criminal court works is that the private prosecutor has to keep up appearances no matter what is happening in other circumstances of this court. So we know that even though the private prosecution in both respects that I've mentioned earlier has been invalidated by all those parties, and the Gauteng High Court and the KZN High Court has agreed that the private prosecution is invalid, he is still launching an appeals process, or in the middle of an appeals process, regarding some of these orders. So while that appeals process is reaching its finalization, this criminal court still goes on with what it has to do and to enroll the matter and hear the matter on the date that it's set. Now, following the postponement in December, this is the date that the former president got next to appear here in the criminal court. Now, we know the president won't be here, but the former president, in his capacity as a private prosecutor, is obligated to appear before the court this morning and explain what the current circumstances are. So what you can expect this morning is that the former president will arrive. He'll then explain to the judge exactly what is happening in the matter, where the appeals process is at, and he'll likely seek another postponement to ensure that the matter is on the roll. Remember, if he doesn't appear in his capacity as a private prosecutor, then Section 11 of the Criminal Procedure Act then applies, and that matter would be dismissed permanently because he's failed to appear, and then those charges against the quote-unquote accused would be dismissed. Now, we expect from 10 a.m. those proceedings will be coming to light here at the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg. Now, Ayanda, I just want to detour for a bit. The former president has arrived in his capacity as a private prosecutor to deal with this matter this morning. So essentially, he'll be supported by his lawyers, and he'll come into the court this morning and explain the details or the circumstances surrounding what is happening in this private prosecution. It's likely that he'll bring up the issue of appeals in this matter and how he needs to finalize these appeals. Remember, our highest court in the land is the Constitutional Court, so he has some time to approach various courts, superior courts in the country, to appeal this matter. And until he has finalized these appeals, he still has to keep up these appearances in the criminal court. As I've stated earlier, Section 11 of the Criminal Procedure Act doesn't allow for a private prosecutor to dismiss those proceedings. He has to explain to the court why he's not arriving for the criminal case, and then it would automatically be dismissed permanently if the court is not convinced that circumstances beyond his control would have left him without appearing in this court. So that's the former president arriving here this morning, heading into the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg to make his appearance as a private prosecutor. You can expect that while there's a lot of activity inside the court this morning, there will be an equal amount of activity outside, as we see a stage has been set up for MK supporters to arrive and support the former president in his bid later today when the proceedings start at 10 a.m. Over to you in studio, Ayanda.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, between his corruption trial, the MK party, and registering with the IEC, and his own candidature, the former president has certainly been in court on a number of occasions just in the past 2 weeks alone. Suffice to say very quickly, Kenny, that today is likely to be a pretty brief sitting of the High Court in Johannesburg.
Indeed, Ayanda, you've correctly put it. It'll be a very quick postponement. As I've stated earlier, the president has successfully invalidated this private prosecution, so he cannot appear. There's no accused that will be in the criminal dock this morning, so there's no private prosecution that can proceed in the criminal court this morning. All he can do is explain the circumstances and then seek that postponement date from the courts, which he is likely to do when it starts at 10 a.m. this morning.
Canny Maphanga, live to us there from the High Court in Johannesburg, doing a great job at distilling the detail for us. Kenny, for now, thanks very much indeed.